Namaste, welcome to Vivekananda Cultural Center YouTube channel. So today we have a special guest with us, Swami Shivarishi.
Namaste to all of you.
So Swami Shivarishi has been practicing yoga past 25 years. So Swami Shivarishi belongs to Satyananda Yoga Center. He is with us to speak about yoga, how the yoga is helpful in present day society, and also you will take up some question and answer sessions asked by some students. So over to Swami Shivarishi.
Namaste to all of you. I express my gratitude to Swami Raghunathananda ji of the Vivekananda Cultural Center, and I am offering my pranams to the Holy Trinity in this extraordinary situation which humanity is facing. Prior to this, a similar situation was faced only in 1918, when for the first time flu affected humanity. Like today, how we are all wearing masks, wearing gloves, and are being extremely careful. In the 1918, if you go and search for the flu epidemic, 1918, you will find pictures of thousands of people wearing masks going about all over the world. And the number of people who died during that time, if you read it, it's alarming. As a human society, we have been behaving more maturely this time. And India, the great Bharat, has been providing guidelines to the whole world. Recently, we have spent the 21st of June, when we had the longest solstice, where the Ida and the Pingala aspects of the universe were in complete balance. We have celebrated the International Day of Yoga as a global festival. And the flag of this great wisdom was first hoisted by none other than the greatest child of this land, Swami Vivekananda. It gives me goosebumps to even mention the name of the greatest yogi of this millennia. Therefore, we have to be proud today that we have inherited the greatest wisdom of our rishis, and yoga happens to be one of the most practical, at the same time modern, at the same time ancient wisdom, which is relevant, was relevant, and will be relevant forever. Now, in the context of COVID, a lot of people have asked us questions whether yoga is really helpful, because the Prime Minister himself is tweeting, the health ministers all over the country of every state are asking people to practice yoga. Government advisories are recommending that people should follow the native health traditions, the Indian systems, and practice yoga. Now, is yoga really going to help you? Will it really be helpful to you to face, challenge, overcome the problem of COVID? There are two things that I would like to tell you all. In the first place, if your digestion is good, if your excretion is good, if your blood circulation is good, if your breathing is good, and if your brain and nervous system are good, that means you are a healthy person. If these five join together and have a proper communication between them, there is a close connection between all of these. What you eat only becomes your blood. So if your digestion is not okay, if you're not eating the right kind of food, if your blood does not have the nutrients that are required for the varieties of cells that are there in our body, each organ has a different cell structure. It's very interesting to note that. The neurons are different from the nephrons. The blood vessels are different from the cells of the kidney. Each of them are functioning, doing different roles, but they have tremendous collaboration between them. And the nerves function as the bridge between each and every cell and the brain and the rest of the whole body. So the requirement of different parts of the body is felt by you as a craving, as a desire to eat a particular type of food. There are 6 tastes according to Ayurveda. And the body will tell you that you need some sweet. The body will tell you that you will need some bitter food. The body will tell you. If you are aware, then you will be able to eat the right kind of food. And when you have the right kind of food, at that time, if your Jata Agni, your digestive fire is strong, then it will get converted to the first stage called Rasa. From then it becomes Raktam. The cells of Rakta have to be infused with prana, so that the whole body gets prana supply. From another angle, the blood has to be oxygenated properly. If your lung is not functioning well, if it has become shrunk, then your blood is running in the body but without any nutrition. Imagine if you have goods trains all over the country running, which are totally empty. No goods are getting delivered from one city to another city. How will we transport material from place to place if the goods trains are all empty? Won't it be complete waste of our effort? In the same way, each cell, blood cell, is like a goods train carriage. It carries in it whatever my bone requires. It carries in it whatever my brain requires. It carries in it what my heart requires. Every organ's supply from the Rakta has to reach to every part of the body. Therefore, you need to have good digestion. You need to have good breathing so that your blood will get oxygenated. Then you should have a strong, healthy heart. We're not talking about the heart in the emotional angle, the physical heart. The heart has to pump nicely. There are 4 chambers in the heart. They have to squeeze and open nicely. And you need to have some exercises which will make the heart squeeze and open fully. Then only the blood will be pumped throughout the body. And then you need to have a brain which gets enough blood supply, which gets enough oxygen supply. Because we have a primitive brain which is called as the pons. This is the bottom of the brain. It will be like a lollipop. And that is responsible for your sleep. That is responsible for your fear. That is responsible for your hunger. If you look at around, all animals, they have all these. They have fear. They have hunger. They have the desire to eat and enjoy, and they want to reproduce and have progeny. The pons, which is like the lollipop at the bottom, it is responsible for these 4. So if you don't give enough blood supply and enough oxygenation to the brain, what the brain will do is, it will not function beyond this. The lower brain alone will function. You will live. You will survive like how an animal survives. You will have only the 4 qualities I just mentioned. If you want human qualities to come up, then you have to have lot more prana. Then you have to have lot more blood supply into the higher centers of the brain. And the uniqueness of the human brain is on the top. If you open the skull, it's like a very big Himalayan valley full of twists and turns and ups and downs. Have you seen the structure of the brain? Just go and look at it. You will feel like you're going on a helicopter and you're seeing the Himalayas. It's called grey matter also. If you open that and if you stretch it, it can cover a 20 by 20 floor space with all the neurons spreading across the entire area. For every nanomillimeter, there may be like 10,000 neurons. Imagine how many neurons will be there on the surface of the brain. All of them are connected through the nerves to the whole body. And health means these nerves, this brain, this heart, this lung, this digestion, this excretion, all of them are in good shape. And when you do asanas, when you do pranayama, when you do meditation, all these things that I mentioned just now, they all become healthy. No wonder you can not only face and overcome COVID, you can face anything in life. Okay? Now, I would like to take questions from kids. This is a basic, simple introduction. This is not a complete yoga exposition program, but even in that, I've given you a very broad outlook of how health can be maintained. So I would like to take questions from children who have been attending the programs at the Vivekananda Cultural Center. So let us take the first question now.
Sir, my question is, did our ancestors practice yoga? Why we have lost it in between? And why it has become so popular now?
Very beautiful question. Did our ancestors practice yoga? And in between, why we lost or why we did not hear about yoga, and why it has become so famous now. For the last question, I think humanity has some good luck now. Otherwise, the buddhi will not accept good things. So I remember the great revolutionary and modern rishi, Sri Aurobindo. He used to say that there is a change in the consciousness of the whole of humanity, and he used to say that the divinity is descending and it is going to be prevalent in each and every fiber of this universe. And he mentioned that the unique time when such a mass transformation is just approaching. And probably he had the understanding that the seeds sown by, when I just mentioned the name Vivekananda, actually I'm getting horripilated. My each and every hair is standing. It is totally to the credit of Swami Vivekananda for humanity to have an understanding that there is a thing called yoga. Because the Western historians, they, even in movies, if you see movies like Indiana Jones, old movies, they will show India with a man wearing one dhoti which is above the knee and there's no top shirt, and he's having one turban, and he's either with a dog or with a cattle or with a snake or with a monkey. The Indian people were always shown as if they were nomads, that they didn't have any knowledge. Like a Shankanada that came from the Panchajanyam, Swami Vivekananda went to the world stage and he said, "Hey, look at us. We are not whom you think we are." He said, "We belong to the greatest tradition of rishis." And if you look at our traditions, even to do a small Vigneshwara Puja before starting the construction of a house, let's say somebody is doing Bhumi Puja, the person who does the act of the puja, he will be made to sit and he will be made to do a pranayama. Before constructing a house, why should someone do a pranayama? What connection is there between a man who is constructing a house and pranayama. Not only constructing a house, if they were starting a war, let's say a big kingdom is going to start a war, and just before the war they are sitting and doing a prayer, they will do a pranayama and then they will make the resolve. It is called as sankalpa in the yogic Vedic traditions. They will do a resolve that by the grace of Lord, I am taking this effort and let my pranas be able to help me in every which need that will emerge when I am facing the crisis in the war ground. So in every field of life, pranayama has been introduced, dhyanam has been introduced from very materialistic things to spiritual things. So this division of materialism and spiritualism is also an imported idea. It doesn't belong to this land. You must have heard of this idea of Ayudha Puja. On the last day of Dashara, people do puja to everything. Even to this cameraman will sprinkle chandan, put kumkumam, and he will do puja to this camera also, he will do puja to this chair also, to this mic also. To everything puja is being done. What is the meaning of it? The meaning is, it is practical Vedanta. We see God in everything. We sit on God. God is sitting on God. That is the level of understanding the Indian rishis had. And the Indian rishis had thorough understanding of the human personality and the relationship between the human personality and the whole universe. Therefore, they evolved several systems to make life the best. They were not mediocre people. The rishis of Bharat were not at all mediocre people. They were the greatest researchers that you can ever come across in this world. The meticulousness, the commitment, the seriousness, the devotion to every small detail of each and every aspect of life. If you read our scriptures, then you will understand that our ancestors practiced yoga in every aspect of life. I'll give you an example. When you wake up in the morning, how do you wake up? You'll be lying down, you'll stretch yourself, and Amma, I don't want to go to school. Like that you may wake up. You know how the rishis will wake up? The moment they woke up, the moment they realized that they were sleeping, lying down in the bed, they will just observe which side of their nose breath is flowing. Do you know that you don't breathe through both your nostrils? Can you check it now? Can you keep your hand like this, just below the chin, and breathe in? Breathe out like that. Can you try? You will find that one side only your nostril is open. Air is flowing only through one side. Even this boy who is doing the videography, even he is testing. I'm happy. You will observe that only one side your nostril is open. Did you ever think about this? I'm asking you one more question. You give me a sincere answer. Do you know why there are two nostrils in your nose? Why not have one big hole? More air will go, no? I'm asking you genuinely, why do we have two nostrils? Why not one big nose? What is the reason why there are two nostrils? I asked this to a group of doctors when I was invited for a conference of doctors. They didn't really know. Very interesting. They said if somebody gets a cold, if it's blocked this side, they will breathe, and everybody was in laughter. But the reality is, in your body, like in our atmosphere, we have a sun and a moon. your body also has a heating component and a cooling component. You know, in the night, if you have ever tried sleeping on your terrace, you know, in the summer, you put the AC, which is, totally stagnant air, and you sleep inside the AC room, which has got dirty air revolving again and again inside the room. You just ask your mama and papa, can we sleep in the terrace? So in the evening at around 5 o'clock, you go to the terrace, sprinkle some water on the floor, make the floor chill, and one night you go and sleep in the terrace, and you will be surprised that till 10:30, 11, the atmosphere, which is hot because of the influence of the moon, from around 11 till about 3, the whole atmosphere cools down. In the same way, in your body also, you have a heating element and you have a calming down, cooling element. The heating element is on the right nostril, and the cooling, calming down element is on the left nostril. Did you ever think about your nose? You are alive because of your nose. Do you know that? If I just put a clip on your nose for 2 minutes, you will not be there. You would have left the body and gone. Within 1 minute, a person can die if the nose is not open. But you have never thought, why do I have 2 holes in my nose? I'm asking you a very practical question. The reason is, when you breathe on the right side, your left brain works. When you breathe on the left side, your right brain works. When your right brain is working, at that time you try to study mathematics, you will not understand anything from it. Okay? If your right side is working, at that time you try to study grammar. That's all. Totally gone. So, depending on which nose is open, which side of your nose is open, you can decide what acts you can get involved in. I am telling you something that the rishis followed. Just before getting out of the bed, when the moment they wake up, they will observe, oh, right nostril is flowing. Therefore, I have to do these kind of acts now. And that is connected to the tithi. Today you do not even know what a tithi is. You may ask your parents and find out. The moon's presence, from the no moon's day or the new moon's day, the next day is called as Prathama. The second day is called Dvitiya. Third day is called Tritiya. Fourth day is called Chaturthi. Like that, there are 14 days. Then the full moon comes. From the full moon again there is one more waning cycle where it goes to the Amavasya day, no moon's day. That has an influence on your brain. Which tithi is operating, how much moon's energy is there in the atmosphere will affect how your left nostril will function, and how your right brain will function, and how your whole body will function. Now, you tell me whether the rishis were observant people or were they snake charmers? Do you understand what I am trying to hint now? The rishis were profound, intelligent people. They were full of wisdom. But the Western countries, they wanted to come into India and plunder India. Bharat was a rich, flourishing, culturally ahead, several times ahead of the rest of the world. So when they came in, when they saw this flourishing culture, they wanted to first plunder it. Then they wanted to become like a parasite. They wanted to come and sit here and suck out of everything. And how do you do that? How do you make these people accept that we are great? They thought about it, and you know what they did? They disconnected us from the wisdom of our rishis. Until the 1800s, till the dawn of Swami Vivekananda, you go back in time to the period when the Mughals were there, when the first invasion of the Mughals were there, from that time till the period of Swami Vivekananda, actually the whole country was made to remain in the dark. But the beauty of this nation is, however difficult life situations were, the rishis have preserved wisdom, even sacrificing their own life. If I tell you, you will be shocked, you will be surprised. Why do you think sannyasi order came in this country? Why do we have so many swamis? Why do we have so many matas? And where were all these matas before? You ask the question, why yoga was not prevalent during a particular period. Where were all the swamis whom we are seeing today? Ochre robe, coming and, guiding people. Where were they? Do you know what they were doing? When I think of them, my heart pounds. One Swami will receive a wisdom, let's say it is yoga, he will learn it fully from his guru and he will go into the forest. He has to live his full term of period without meeting a single human being. Can you think of such capacity? Can you think of such dedication in your life? Just because you know something is great, will you sacrifice your full life without meeting one person in your life? Without getting any food, without getting any shelter, without getting any water. You have to live in a place where no person can come. Because if armies can come, if horses can come, if chariots can come, then they will kill you. So you have to go and live in a place where nobody will come, where there is no source for proper food. You have to live under trees. You have to eat roots. You have to eat just karang they call, roots. You have to eat leaves. You have to search for water. You may not have fridge. You can open, drink. You eat and drink, and all the time you're thinking about food. The sannyasins, the rishis, had to go and live in forest for 30 years, 40 years, 45 years, 70 years. You know what they will be doing? They will be practicing what they knew and they will keep it alive in themselves. When the society gets one more person who is willing to sacrifice his or her life, that person will be sent to this person who is in hiding. This person, whatever knowledge they had, they will pass it on to the second person, like the relay race. In your school, when you run with the baton and you pass it on to your teammate, like that they will keep the wisdom for 40 years, 50 years. And when the person comes, they will pass it to that person and die. There is no entertainment, no television, no radio, no cinema theatre, no club, no nothing. Just the sky and the ground, and the trees, and the thorns, and the poisonous animals and reptiles, the dangerous wild animals. They had to survive. Like that, 100 years, 200 years, 300 years, 400 years, 500 years, 700 years, they had to preserve. In spite of all the onslaughts, this tradition has survived. And when the time came that the modern world became ready, Swami Vivekananda came out and said, don't think we are nomads. Don't think we are snake charmers. Don't think that we are circus people to play with monkeys and bears. We belong to the greatest tradition of rishis. And I follow the tradition for which Swami Shivananda was the founder. He was a doctor. He studied medicine. Then he went to Malaysia. He worked there. Then he came back to India and he took sannyas from our tradition. He became a rishi. Such a great effort has been taken for this wisdom to be preserved. Therefore, our ancestors have always not only practiced yoga, yoga is one of the small things of the great things that our ancestors have practiced and preserved. I hope you are satisfied with what I shared with you. Wonderful. We'll meet again